Closed captioning of this program is made possible by the Fireman's Fund Foundation.
Governor Brown proposes a sweeping pension reform plan, raising the retirement age and trimming benefits for many government workers. The police crackdown on Occupy Oakland prompts other Bay Area cities to look for ways to protect free speech and public safety. The race for mayor in San Francisco is heating up, with a field of 16 candidates, and as more cities choose to use ranked choice voting to elect their leaders, there is still debate over the method and outcome of instant runoff elections.
A lot of eyes are on San Francisco for this election, and this could be the test case for how it works very well. It could be a test case of how it works very poorly.
Those stories coming up next. Good evening, I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me tonight are Mina Kim, reporter for KQED News, and Rachel Gordon, City Hall reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, and Josh Richmond, legal and political affairs reporter for the Oakland Tribune. Josh, the governor just released this proposal on changing the pension plans. What are some of the main points, the major changes he wants to make?
Some of the big plans that he's got are to create, for new workers going forward, hybrid pensions, which are partly a small part like the defined benefit plan that they've got now under CalPERS, but will also have a bigger component of a 401k type plan. Which is sort of what the American standard has become, but is not something that a lot of public workers are used to. He would be pushing the retirement ages later for new workers. He would be using a 3-year average of pay to determine the pension benefits instead of a single one. That's an effort to prevent some of the spiking and other abuses that have gone in the system. For all workers, there'd be an even split of contribution between employer and employee. 50-50 contribution split. And all of these things really have the public workers unions up in arms. They're not happy about this at all. And a lot of the legislative Democrats who often represent these unions' interests are also similarly tepid at best about the plan.
But Judge, didn't the unions know that this was in the works?
They did. And their point is they've made some concessions already, but they feel that the nature of the problem has been misconstrued by the public, that the average pension benefit for a public worker is not exorbitant, that there have been abuses, there are some extremes, but that your average CalPERS beneficiary is not making bank off of this. Opinions vary. What is known is that there's a huge unfunded liability. Some people say it's as much as $500 billion going forward that has to be addressed. The legislature is working on a plan that they're going to roll out in the first quarter of next year. The governor has put this plan out. I think we should look at this plan sort of the way that people have looked at President Obama's American Jobs Act. This is what I think we should do. Now let's see what we can actually negotiate, what we can do.
Well, wasn't that exactly one of the points of the union, saying that pension issues should be collectively bargained? It shouldn't be something that comes from the governor. To be part of larger issues when you talk about pay and other benefits, put that in the mix. But perhaps they didn't come to the table on their own first, which maybe the governor wanted. That he, as you said, he used this kind of as the opening salvo, at least to say, let's get there. This is what you face if you don't come and give us something.
Exactly. You know, he's sort of setting some parameters here. You saw it in the statements that Assembly Speaker John Perez and Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg put out following his announcement, basically saying, interesting ideas. We'll take it under consideration. Let's talk. You know,
but this goes to the voters, right? I mean, we'll go through the legislature.
It'll go. The governor wants the legislature to put it on the ballot. Okay. And he's not really shown a lot of willingness to go directly to a voter initiative the way that he probably will for the tax hikes next year. So he really does want to work with the legislature on this to some extent. And you'll probably see some of these elements of his plan advance, but some of them are probably, he probably knows that some of these are sort of non-starters, but he wants to set it out there, put everything on the table, and see what he can get through the legislature.
So what are lawmakers saying? I mean, who are his allies on this?
Well, surprisingly, and who would have foreseen this a year ago, there were some happy faces on the Republican side of the aisle. There were some Republican state senators who were saying, yeah, maybe we'd like to even do a little bit more, but we can get behind this. We'll put this on the ballot. Democrats, not so much. Like I said, they often tend to have the union's interests at heart to some extent. For instance, Darrell Steinberg's rhetoric was a provocative set of reforms. We'll approach them with an open mind. But we can't forget that the vast majority of public sector employees are middle-class workers, and their average pensions are far from exorbitant. He doesn't want to see this basically laid on the backs of workers.
Because behind the unions are the workers.
Behind the unions are the workers, and in front of the unions are a lot of the Democrats' campaign bankrolls.
Sure.
Politically, for Jerry Brown, I mean, it does show a politician at the tail end of his career potential. I mean, he could run for governor again, or maybe he'll try a presidential run. But really, he's showing that he doesn't have to toe the party line, because he's been there, done that, and he said he's going to come in with independent ideas, and it certainly is showing
I think this would make it a lot harder for someone to argue that he's beholden to the public sector unions, as some have accused him in the past. On the other hand, I think he's also putting this out there knowing that not all of it's going to go through, but this is how he starts, this is the hand that he starts out with.
What are the savings? That's the bottom line. What does this do for California's budget problems?
Well, it's not so much the budget problem. The structural budget deficit and the pensions unfunded liabilities are two very different things. So this is not really a budget issue per se. Eventually, it could become a budget issue further down the line if we get to the point of those liabilities needing to be paid off. At the moment, the governor estimates that his reform plan would save the state somewhere in the vicinity of $4 billion to $11 billion over 30 years. And maybe $21 billion to $56 billion over 60 years. So this is one of those things where you got to take the long view. The chair of the Republican Party came out this week and said, we can't wait 60 years. We got to fix this right now. But again, he's sort of engaging in a kind of partisan rhetoric that even some of the Republicans in the legislature are not really quick to say. They think this is at least a decent starting place. So.
Well, the city that the governor was mayor of for a long time made international news this week because of the Occupy movement. And Mina, you were there for some of the toughest parts of what happened in Oakland in terms of the protesters and clashes with law enforcement officials.
Yeah, there were a lot of tense moments on Tuesday night, and there were a couple of instances when I was running from tear gas myself. The first one was at 8th and Washington initially, when protesters were marching towards police headquarters. And as they approached that intersection, police, there were sort of these flash bangs that I heard, and protesters started scurrying everywhere, though they regrouped and they continued to march up Franco Gala Plaza. And there was the scene of another really tense interaction with police, where police called an unlawful assembly and said that they needed to disperse or chemical agents would be used. But interestingly, though, some protesters wanted to sort of clash at that first moment at Franco Gala Plaza. They did not, in fact, do that. They continued to meander through the city for some time. And then at the end of the night, it turned really ugly, where there were just several rounds of tear gas, police projectiles that were affecting multiple numbers of people, and have left many questions at this point about what exactly was used that night in terms of the non-lethal weaponry by police, and what kind of policies they were really following when they were, in fact, clashing with protesters.
I mean, that's one of the interesting things, because it wasn't just the Oakland Police Department that was involved, but it was more than a dozen law enforcement agencies from the Bay Area that was brought in, and people are wondering who Oakland was supposed to be in charge, but were they in charge? Whose policies were they following? whose orders were they following? If there were some violations of police practice and protocol, who's going to hold them accountable? I mean, there are a lot of questions on using that tactic, it seems.
Yeah, at today's, Mayor Jean Quan held a press conference today, and she said that they were looking into, that she has ordered a more complete investigation of what happened, what police tactics were used, and what the other police agencies may have had in their arsenal, the ones who had offered mutual aid for that night. So hopefully there'll be some answers to those questions. But I did visit the encampment today after all of that, and it was just a marked difference from Tuesday night. I mean, it was very calm. There were people meditating, praying. There was also a lot of excitement. Michael Moore paid a visit today and kind of ignited the group. But it makes sense. I mean, if you're a protester, you're feeling pretty good right now. You've had some significant victories. You've been allowed to reoccupy Frank Ogawa Plaza. You got an apology from the mayor. You have national groups like Move On, showing support, putting out a video that was just really critical of Mayor Kwan's handling of all of this, and you're also allowed to camp. I mean, there was no police interference with camping, even though there are multiple
Is this
calls.
camping overnight, or is this at the 10 o'clock curfew that the mayor had asked for?
The 10 o'clock curfew came and went, and tents remained there. And in fact, today, Chief Howard Jordan said that the line that he's going to be taking over the weekend is that there's going to be a minimal police presence through the weekend, and that they will only respond if there are service calls to the area.
And this melee the other night has sort of given the national movement its first martyr, too, huh?
Yes, Scott Olson, the 24-year-old Iraq War veteran. Well, he is recovering. He is expected to make a full recovery, but the injury was a fracture to his skull from a police projectile, and it has actually robbed him of his ability to talk, though they think that's temporary. But he has become sort of the battle cry. When I was at the encampment today, there was a photo of him, a large photo of him taped to one of the tents. So definitely he's becoming a symbol of the movement.
And how's Jean Quan handling this? I mean, when I saw her in the press conference the other day, she looked like a deer in the headlights. She looked just terrible about it. She ordered the police in, apparently, or she allowed the police to go in, and yet she took off to go to Washington, D.C. at the time of really one of the biggest tests of her administration. Yeah,
Rachel, she's had a really tough week. I mean, you're right. She looked exhausted. She looked uncomfortable. She dodged questions about responsibility at Wednesday's press conference. I have to say, today's press conference, she tried to show that she had a little bit more control. She said things like, I'm the mayor, I'm responsible. And she also tried to put out sort of a plan, in the sense that she said that public safety will be her #1 priority, that she would continue to order a minimal police presence. She said that as long as first responders, public health inspectors are allowed into the camp, she'll continue to work with the protesters, and also said that she will try to address them since she was booed.
Can you comment just a little bit on what's happened in San Francisco, San Jose, other surrounding cities while all this has been going on?
Sure. Well, San Francisco has had some interesting, I think Ed Lee is trying to take a different approach. He has been in negotiations directly with Occupy San Francisco folks, and his plan, as I understand it, is to continue these direct negotiations, to put out some conditions in hopes that San Francisco, the Occupy San Francisco movement protesters will sort of play ball with him, and he's trying to avoid what has become such an ugly scene in the national spotlight, because there's a lot of political implications for him at stake if he mishandles this. So he's trying to take a slightly different approach by negotiating directly with protesters in a way that has a little bit more substance to it, I think.
Well, at the bottom of all this, there was comments about Jean Quan's being elected through ranked choice voting, and so that's going to be happening here in San Francisco soon. San Franciscans are using ranked choice voting for the very first time in a competitive mayoral race. Whether voters find the task of ranking their top 3 from a field of 16 is liberating or daunting is up for debate. And as Scott Schaefer shows us, instant runoff voting is making a difference in not only how the mayor's race is won, but how it is run.
So just a quick show of hands, who here is registered to vote already? I do. Excellent.
San Francisco Department of Elections official John Draper has come to this South of Market Senior Center to not only get out the vote, but also explain the method for casting that vote.
Is everyone here familiar with ranked choice voting? Have you guys voted on a ranked choice ballot before? Okay, that's kind of what I figured, so let's go over it.
Draper gives presentations up to 3 times a day as part of a $165,000 outreach program to educate voters still in the dark about ranked choice voting. After marking their first choice on a ranked choice ballot, voters pick their second and third choices in columns 2 and 3. To begin, every voter's first choice is counted. If a candidate gets more than 50% of those votes, they're declared the winner. But if no candidate receives a majority, the candidate with the least votes is eliminated. Those who voted for that candidate will now have their second choice votes counted. The process of eliminating candidates and redistributing votes continues until one candidate has a winning majority.
People ask me about this all the time. Can I just vote for one candidate 3 times? That is a problem because if that candidate is eliminated, we don't have anywhere to transfer your vote. So your ballot will become what we call exhausted.
To find out what would happen if a ballot were exhausted, we met with Francis Matthew in the Department of Elections.
If someone comes to the polls on election day and votes incorrectly, can you sort of describe what happens with the ballot?
Let's do it. Go ahead and feed that ballot into the machine.
Okay. Just like this?
Exactly. Any direction, it'll read it.
And they just put it in.
So it makes the warning noise and returns the ballot. And then up here, it prints irregular voting pattern, overvoted rank.
Voters are then given the chance to correct their ballots. But what about those who skip the trip to the polling place?
We've got about 40% vote by mail, I believe, right now.
And of course, those voters are kind of on their own in the sense that they're not going to get anybody telling them, and then the ballot's not going to come back out if they do it wrong.
Yeah, we can't mail one of these machines to every voter, unfortunately.
Strategically placed billboards and bus shelters are all part of the city's multilingual campaign to educate voters. Is the message hitting home? We asked a few San Francisco residents how familiar they were with ranked choice and what they thought of the system.
What do you know about the system we're using to elect a mayor? Do you know what it's called, for example?
Oh, now this is like a little test. Yeah, it's ranked choice voting. I like the fact that we're not having to spend the money for a second election, which always seemed extremely wasteful to me. So I'm willing to give it a try.
When you ask 9 people what their favorite thing to eat is, they could all have 9 different things to say and you wouldn't get any answers. But if you said rate your top 3 choices, then maybe you'd get more of a consensus.
This one here.
That's who you're going to vote for?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one.
Now, you know you get 3 votes, right?
Yeah, that's the same all over the bus. This time's the same this time.
So you're going to vote for him?
Yes.
3 times?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yeah. Now,
There's nothing else.
There's nobody else you like?
No.
Yeah. So, but you get 3 votes, so you can vote for
fine.
3 different people.
That's fine.
You're not going to use that?
No. I like the only one, this one here.
You put it in there, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
San Francisco voters passed ranked choice, or instant runoff voting, in 2002. But this is the first time it will be put to the test in a competitive mayoral race, changing not only the way voters cast their ballots, but also how candidates campaign for their vote.
I would be honored for you to consider me to be your first, second, or third choice. Thank you very much.
I too will ask for one of your 3 votes.
The values built into ranked choice voting is that you have to have both a certain strong core of support and a broad base in order to win. If you have one or the other, you won't win. If you have both, you have a good chance of winning.
Stephen Hill has long championed electoral reform. He was the driving force behind both ranked choice voting and public campaign financing in San Francisco. He says the instant runoff system eliminates the cost of low turnout runoff elections and gives more citizens a say in who wins. And he believes it cuts down on political mudslinging.
It does have a tendency to clean up the campaign debate a little bit. You know, if I'm running against you and I may need the second rankings from your supporters. If that's the case, I have to be more careful what I say about you. Doesn't mean I can't still criticize you or take a position opposed to you, but I have to do it more on principle instead of just completely trashing you.
Thank you guys all for coming and thank you for waiting.
In fact, rival candidates Dennis Herrera and David Chiu did appear very friendly at a joint press conference in September. But afterward, Herrera admitted he does have mixed feelings about the ranked choice system.
Certainly with ranked choice voting, there has been some benefit in terms of collegiality, but I wonder whether it's made it more difficult to really discern real distinctions amongst the candidates.
Thank you.
So the challenge for voters is now you have 12, 14 candidates running citywide at the same time, and the differences on issues become one of shades. And voters look at this mass of candidates, and it's hard to differentiate among any of them. Now that plays out very well for Ed Lee, I should note. That's beneficial to him as a candidate. Incumbents have not lost ranked choice elections in the Bay Area, and so the reality is most incumbents end up being on other people's second and third place ballots.
Are you ready to vote? Yeah! Let's go out and vote!
On the first day of early voting, Mayor Lee staged a rally, then led the crowd to City Hall, casting his own ranked choice ballot. Even though he may benefit from an instant runoff, Lee has concerns about whether voters understand how ballots are counted.
A lot of people still are saying they don't understand what happens to their vote, and that causes some confusion.
The thing about ranked choice is that the leader on election night can end up losing, as candidates are eliminated and their votes are redistributed until someone gets a majority. That's exactly what happened last year in Oakland's mayoral contest. State Senator Don Parada was first with 35%, followed by City Councilwoman Jean Quan at 24%. But Quan had more second and third place votes. That was her strategy. And after several days of tabulation, she edged out Parada 51 to 49%.
I'm not bitter personally, but it seems to me that we all shouldn't be talking about this at this point of an election in San Francisco. If you're talking about how the election works, as opposed to who's running and what are they saying, there's something wrong.
A lot of eyes are on San Francisco for this election because a lot of jurisdictions are thinking about experimenting with this, and this could be the test case for how it works very well. It could be a test case of how it works very poorly.
Well, at the next election, we'll be finding out. It appears, though, that ranked choice voting is not the only issue grabbing attention in the upcoming elections in San Francisco, and Rachel Gordon is here to tell us now, what are all of the things that are making news about this election?
Right, there are a lot of October surprises out there. This is less than 2 weeks before the election, although people have started voting several weeks ago, so there have been about 30,000 ballots cast already in San Francisco, and they'll keep going through this weekend and with absentees. But the big issues that are out there now, there's a lot of issues swirling around voter fraud that on behalf of Mayor Ed Lee. Now, this is something that some folks who are independent of his campaign have been accused of doing, going into Chinatown, helping people fill out ballots, like almost taking their hands and going, here's Ed Lee. And in fact, folks said they even had stencils there so you couldn't fill in anyone else's name. The district attorney is investigating those charges. Some of Lee's rivals are coming out and saying that they want state and federal elections investigations on this behavior. And Ed Lee himself has come out now and said, if that's true, what they did is moronic. I don't want their help. Thank you. Cease and desist. No more. So that's one of the issues that's still out there. It's got some legs. Definitely his rivals are bringing it up. Another issue that broke this week was kind of interesting. There was a front page story in the Chronicle about some accusations made about City Attorney Dennis Herrera. And the accusation was that he wasn't as strong as he could have been or should have been in the 2004 legal battle for same-sex marriage in San Francisco. Dennis Herrera, who's a city attorney then and is now running for mayor, said that's absolutely ridiculous. He has been with that issue from the get-go. But these were some anonymous sources from the Gavin Newsom's administration, mayoral administration, who said, yeah, eventually he came on, but he was slow going at the start. Interesting, it's coming out now simply because the gay vote in San Francisco is still an extremely powerful vote. I watched Herrera try to take it to his advantage, though, this week, that he went, all right, I'll show you what people think about me. And he had State Senator Mark Leno, Assemblyman Tom Amiano, Supervisor Scott Wiener, all gay politicians, elected officials, and other community activists coming out and saying Dennis was with us from the get-go.
Okay, you've got 14 others out there. What are some of the other things that are bouncing off the wall?
Those are the big ones. We're going to continue hearing about the Central Subway project. That's the rail extension into Chinatown that a lot of the candidates are going for. But they're going to start hammering a lot, too, on the campaign finance reports. The new ones came out yesterday, so they're going to look not only how much money have the candidates raised, how much do they have in the bank, but really take a close look at the independent expenditures, because there is not a limit in the mayor's races to the candidates' own campaigns. You could give up to $500. You could give as much money as you want to with the independent expenditures for or against candidates, and we're starting to see that play a lot. There have also been some allegations that money there's some hanky-panky going in around there with some of Lee's supporters. Leland Yee has tapped into, the state senator who's running has tapped into a lot of independent expenditure money. on his behalf from the teachers unions, nurses and stuff. We are being inundated in San Francisco with robocalls, with mails coming in, the stacks this big every week. I don't know if the voters are paying attention, if they are, if they're going enough.
Okay, let's get to the big issue, the DVD for Ed Lee.
Right, there's a great DVD. This was put on by some of his wealthy supporters, but it was Brian Wilson, Giants fan, with saying it's kind of a hip-hop rap video for Ed Lee. He didn't have anything to do with it. It was his supporters, but it went viral. It's really kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, you hear that a lot from Ed Lee. He didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, didn't have anything to do with it.
You don't usually think of Ed Lee as being hip either,
yeah, well, that's
in any
the thing.
meaningful
that's
way,
the funny
right?
thing. He has some good dance moves, especially when you use the computers to manipulate what he's looking like. But we're going to start hearing a lot more. It's winding down in terms of what the messages are going to be. We're seeing is there something else that's going to come out, but now they're getting their messages out. And we talked about ranked choice voting. People are really trying now for that second and third place vote. And we can't ignore the whole Occupy SF thing. I mean, you brought that up, that this could have real consequences. Right now, Ed Lee's been fairly lucky with it, that there haven't been horrible things happening. He has had people in his office talking about it.
Would it be fair to say, though, that this is probably the most controversial issue that he's had to deal with?
Potentially it could be. You've seen several of his mayoral rivals there at the camp with supporters. John Avalos, the supervisor, David Chiu, the Board of Supervisors president, others at Leland Yee have been out there in support of the protesters. So it's going to be an interesting
candidates, you did a great job. Thank you, Rachel. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining me here tonight. And that's all for tonight. We hope that you'll visit our website, kqed.org/thisweek. That's where you can watch complete episodes and segments. You can subscribe to our newsletter and our podcast, and you can share your thoughts about the program and our stories. I'm Belda Davis. Good night.